thought I'd return to siliconing this week, a subject which arguably launched my channel with the 5 videos that I've done on it amassing over 7 million views, and I'm massively thankful to you all for watching those vids. Now, before I start talking about how I filled this gap, somebody's going to point out to me that my bifolds are too high. There's too much of a lip between the floor and the sill. And you'd be right. They should have probably been, I don't know, 40 mil lower. When I ordered the bifolds, the kitchen was a complete building site. We had no real idea what the finished floor levels were going to be, and in fact the bifolds were intended for the other side of the kitchen. With no architects at that point, not fully appreciating the detailing below the bifolds, and being pretty inexperienced at the whole project management side of things, I took a punt and ordered them to the length that I just agreed with my builder. If I'd checked closely the technical drawings, that might have given me more of an idea of the internal floor dimensions and perhaps the need to coincide those with this particular detailing here. I thought I'd just point this out today in case any of you are thinking of replacing your French doors or whatever with bifolds. It's not something that's immediately obvious, but it was something that I thought you might find interesting. Anyway, back to the siliconing. When I tiled the kitchen floor and I cut these tiles by hand with my 125mm grinder, I left an 8mm expansion gap between the tiles and the door. Rather than filling this with grout, which might crack, I thought I'd silicone it as this joint would have a bit more flexibility, and I found this Mapei silicone which pretty much exactly matched the colour of the grout. The tiling was done back in March and the joint needed a good vacuum to get all the dust and rubbish out, and I used a brilliant razor blade tool in the Silicone Profiling Kit 7, more on that in a minute, to trim off a few bits of tile adhesive and grout left on the surface. Oh, and sugar soaked wipes are a great aid on jobs like this. Quick chat about applicator guns because I refer to them a lot in my siliconing videos. Basically, you don't want to buy any gun, I don't think, for under 10 quid. I bought this from Travis Perkins years ago. It's a pretty decent quality workhorse that's served me well. On this job today though, I've been using this, which is Toshiba RS Convoy. I'm not known for using a high quality kit like this, but I have to say it's been fantastic. It does pay to spend a bit more on your applicator gun, depending on how much silicone you're doing, because it will stand the test of time, it will last you. This one unfortunately has gone a bit rusty in my basement in the damp conditions, which is a bit of a shame. But anyway, what's so good about this gun is it's got a setting here which enables you to vary the power of the gun. So today I've been using it on this setting. You can clearly see the plunger going down quite quickly, but for thicker silicones, mastics, you can switch it like that, and then it's on a much lower ratio, and basically you can see how much slower the plunger is going in. Makes your life so much easier, it's easier on the hands when you're trying to apply a more viscous or stiffer premium silicone, modified polymer or sealant. At this point it was time to open the silicone and to cut the nozzle, as I always do, at 90 degrees, as this forces silicone into the joint better than if you have a diagonal nozzle that you have a tendency to drag down the gap. And I cut the nozzle at a similar width to the gap, about 7 or 8mm. Now the trick is to force as much silicone into the gap as possible, whilst not leaving too much sticking out above the surface, so as to minimise wastage. And why the wastage? Because today I'm using my Kramer forming tool. I'd normally use this one for a 90-degree finish, but I can't fit it under that pesky detail, so I went for the smaller tool, which does mean I'm going to have more cleaning up to do. What I should have done is just cut a wedge out of this tool, because I never use the concave profile. Next tip, work in short runs. 2 reasons for this. Firstly, you're going to get wastage on that forming tool. Too long a run and it's going to spill over everywhere. Secondly, you've got about 5 minutes to retool a run of silicone before it skins over. So short runs allow you to go back and start the tool on the previous run that you've already smoothed, onto that new bit you've just siliconed, leaving a seamless transition that shows no signs of skinning over, if that makes sense. Now, to conserve silicone, you can reapply that wastage into the next gap, but you need to work quickly if you want to do this, to make sure you start smoothing the silicone before it skins over on that previous run. I've also got these Fugenfuchs tools which I use to silicone behind the taps in our bathroom, but I was disappointed with how they formed the silicone on this job. So it's back to the Kramer tool to sort it out. Tip 4, it's essential to keep your work area clean, particularly with all that surplus silicone. I have a bucket handy, a roll of tissue or kitchen roll and those wipes, so I can clean down the tool after each short run so it's pristine for the next. Now, I'm not going to say my technique was perfect here, and with that small tool I ended up with a lot of silicone spilling over and needing to be cleaned off the doors. But bottom line, I got the job done to a near perfect standard. Nearly, but not quite. Inexplicably, and possibly because I was focusing on the filming, I left a little section here, almost like a little silicone bubble. And then I made that cardinal error of trying to go over it 10, 12 minutes later. And as I said, once it's skinned over, you mustn't touch it. Secondly, that evening, my son managed to park his toes on an area over here in the corner. So this left me with a bit of a dilemma, and I decided to do something that not a lot of people probably do. The morning after the siliconing job, I noticed that the silicone had slightly shrunk into the joint, and this presented me with a perfect opportunity to apply one more pass of silicone on top of the previous one to end up with a perfect job. Now, I did a video on this just after doing my original bathroom siliconing video, and I proved that as long as the silicones are compatible and where you're using the same silicone, obviously there's a guarantee there, you can silicone over existing silicone. Back to younger me to explain. As you can see now, here the silicone is dried onto the existing silicone, and I'm now going to try and remove it so that I can show you how well it's adhered. And as you can see, we've got a really good bond there. The existing silicone bead here has been in the shower for about 1.5 years. I haven't really degreased this particularly well, I've just given it a quick clean, and I cannot scrape off the new silicone from that existing silicone bead. So off I went with one final pass, and that damaged section was nicely covered up. We've now got as close to perfect a finish as is possible, although the HD photos taken today reveal tiny scratches on the surface, and I've just realised that on day 2 I stupidly used one of my older forming tools that has been damaged. Always check your tools, and you can resharpen them with some wet and dry sandpaper. And finally, I used a combination of multi-solve spray and those sugar soaked wipes to remove any residual silicone from the doors. Being careful not to get the CT1 on the silicone itself, because it's a silicone remover as well as degreaser. Details of everything that I've talked about today will, as usual, be in the description below the video, and don't forget you can access that by clicking on the More button. And if you're new to my channel, it would mean so much to me to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here, and don't forget to click the bell notification icon so you get notified of all my future uploads. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week.